A Freilich in Chanukah. This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Nun Chas. Today's shir has been generously sponsored by a very close friend of the Daf, Baruch Hashem, as a schos ili neshama for Penina Bas Rav Doiv Ber, whose yahrzeit is tomorrow, whose yahrzeit is Friday, B'siyat D'Shmaya, the 5th day of Chanukah. The learning of the entire Chabura should bring Penina Bas Rav Doiv Ber to a higher place in Gan Eden Shel Meila, and a Milatz Yesher for her entire family. So we're holding on the very bottom of Nun Zayin Amud Beis, a sugya in which we began yesterday. It's going to take us through the entirety of today, all the way into tomorrow. Tomorrow it's going to come full circle and get back to Nedarim. So to remind yourself, if everyone for a moment can take a peek at the top of Nun Zayin Amud Beis. And the Gemara began over there, the Yishmael Ish Kfar Yama, and someone say Ish Kfar Di Yama. He had the following question. He had a batzel, an onion, that was picked during Shemitah, and therefore it's forbidden. And then it was planted during the 8th year. And now the question is, it grows. There's more gidulav, more offshoots than the ikar. The question is, gidulav heter v'ikara iser. What is the status of this entity right now? Do we say that since there is more gedulav from the main, it is mutter, or no? And as we mentioned yesterday, there's a massive machlokes in this sugya. What exactly is the Gemara's question? The Ran learns this entire sugya that the question is, what is the status of the offshoots? Not that we know the offshoots are heter, and it's an Isser v'heter shayla, is it batal or not? But the Ran learns that we're discussing the actual status of the offshoots, whereas the Taisus and the Rosh over here learn that no, we know that the offshoots are heter. And now the question is, what is the status of this Ta'arayves mixture? Yesterday, at the bottom of the Amid, we had a bunch of rayos, which are important to keep in mind. Amarayim, that brought rayos both ways. We concluded yesterday with the second raya, which we said maybe it's not a raya, because dilma lachumra shiny. Maybe you're going to bring me a raya from one case, and we're going to have more of these cases today, but maybe you can't bring such a raya. Why? Because maybe the only reason that in such a scenario we're going to be machmir is lechumra. And with that, we're on the last line of Nedarim and Beis, and therefore the Gemara tries once again. Again, we're looking for a raya of our onion that is forbidden. It's a Shemitah onion that is replanted in the 8th year. What is the status now that the offshoots that grow are more than the original onion? What is the status of the entity right now? So says the Gemara in the last line of Nedarim and Beis, Elamin Aho Detanya, the following brisa. Rabbi Shimon Omer, says Rav Shimon, as we flip over to Nun Ches Amud Aleph, says Rav Shimon, Kol Davar Sheyesh Lo Matir. And of course, we're going to have some of the largest concepts in all of Isser v'Heter on these dafim. Says Rav Shimon, something which is Yesh Lo Matirin. What does it mean? Something that's Yesh Lo Matirim. If you look at the top Ran, he says, Yesh Lo Matirim means you're able to be mafresh yimacham acher. Yesh Lo Matirim is a concept in Isser v'Heter in Yeridea, in which we say this entity could become mutter. Right now it might be aser, but there is a permissible aspect to this entity. So davar sheyesh lo matirim. What is a davar sheyesh lo matirim? Says the Gemara in the top of Nun Ches Amud Aleph, quoting this brisa kigoin. For example, tevel u'maiser sheni. We have tevel, we have maiser sheni, we have hektish, we have chadash, all forbidden entities. In all these cases, lo nidnu bem chachamim shir. The chachamim did not give a precise measurement of when there is bittul, but rather the halacha is that, as the Ran on the third line points out, sha'oisram bekol shu b'minan. If they get mixed with a like entity, like with like, these entities are aser even bekol shu. A tiniest little bit will aser up the whole mixture. The Ran continues and points out, if it's shaloi b'minan, but it's nice in tam, but it gives off taste. For example, therefore, even the Ashta Asiri Kamoy, as we're going to explain. So again, we have an entity which is forbidden, which we're learning right now, will not be batal in any form of mixture. It could be in thousands more than it. It's aser afilu b'kolshu. V'chol davar she'in loy ma'atirin. But any item which there's no way to permit it, it's an ein loy matirim. So if it's a davar sheyesh lo matirim, something which you could eventually make mutter, it's never batal. Why is it never batal? We can understand very simply, because you could fix it. So if you're going to fix it, say Chazal, why should we let you eat it? But if it is, sir, there's a way that you could fix it. So if there's a way that you could fix it, we have to fix it. So davar sheyesh lo matirim will never be batal. But davar she'ein lo matirin, says the Gemara in the third line of Nuchesam and Aleph. Kigoin, what's an example of a davar she'ein lo matirim? Kigoin, truma smaiser, chala, orla, kalaya, kerem. In all these entities, there's no way just to go and do a hafrasha and separate it. Regular meiser, you take off the appropriate amount. But over here, there's no way to fix it. These are entities which are forbidden. And the Ran, about 5 lines into the narrow line, points out, even though there is a way to undo it theoretically, you could be shayel on it. You could undo the whole process. But keeping the leka mitzvah, we don't let you be shayel on it. So, an entity which is ein loy matirin, an entity which you cannot permit, what's the halacha? Nosnu behem chachamim shir. Chazal gave us a shir. Chazal gave us a shir which is going to be batal, as the Ran points out, even if this are even its own entity. Balan chuma chumas meiser v'chala, in how much? In meya. Orla klaya kerim amasayin she'ena milan shishin. These are the classical halachas of bittul. Shishin we know 60 times. Now we're learning chumas meiser chalos batal b'meya 100 times. Or leklaya kerim or batal b'masayim. But again, these are only entities in ein loy matirin that there's no way to permit it. So we have a brisa, and Rav Shimon is teaching us in this brisa, in the world of Isser v'Heter, we have 2 fundamental categories. We have yesh lo matirim, it could be permitted, it's never batal. Ein lo matirim, it yes will be batal. Amru lai, the Chachamim respond to Rav Shimon, and say the Chachamim, v'hala shvies, ein lo matirim. But Shemitah is something that can't be mutter. If something has Kedusha Shvias, there's no way to fix that. And yet, lo nizu chacham shir, even though it's ein lo matirin, according to your ruler of Shimon, what should the halacha be? Ein lo matirin should have a shir to be mevatel it. And yet we see, Shemitah, which is ein lo matirin, there is no way to be mevatel it. How do we know this? Ditinan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Hashvias oiseres kolshu, Shemitah is usher in any little bit, bimina, if it mixes with its own kind. Okay, so far we have, if it could be permitted, yesh lo matirin, it's never batal. Ein lo matirin, it can't be permitted, batal either shishim, meya, masayim. Shemitah breaks the rules. Even though Shemitah is ein lo matirin, still it's never going to be batal, and even a kolshu is going to be usher. Back to the Braisa. Amr lehen. So Rav Shimon says back to the Chachamim. Afani lo yamarti. Even I, when I said the rule, say Rav Shimon, the qualifications of yesh lo matirin versus ein lo matirin, I was talking about ella libir. I was talking about to removal. That once the time comes that there's no more fruits in the field, the aniyim have nothing left. The halacha is you have to remove all your fruits from the house. During Shemitah, you're allowed to eat the produce, but once there's nothing left in your house, you're no longer allowed to eat it. Once there's nothing left in the field, you're no longer allowed to eat it, and therefore, you have to get rid of it. But what do we see? Before the time of beer, you're yes allowed to eat this produce. And that's the reason why, even though Shemitah can't be permitted, even though ostensibly Shemitah is ein lo matirin, but because there's a way to eat it, it gets the rules of a davar sheyesh lo matirin, because you could eat it. Avol la'achila. But with regard to eating it, that's when it's going to be considered a yesh lo matirin, because you're able to eat it. Therefore, b'noisin tam, when is going to be aser b'kolshu? Only when it gives off taste. But if it does not give off taste, then the Shemitah will not be batal. So what is the halacha of Shemitah? Says Rav Shimon, it does follow the rules of Yesh Lai or Ein Lai Matirin. Even though it seemed to have break the rules, says Rav Shimon, explains the Gemara, it's not true. Why is it not true? Because says Rav Shimon, Shemitah conforms to the rules for the simple reason that before beer you could eat it, after beer you cannot eat it, then it will be dependent on Noisin Tam. Therefore it's like a Yesh Lo Matir. So basically, what is this have to do with our onion? So explains the Gemara, explains the Mefarshim, what were to happen if I have an onion from year number 6? An onion from year number 6 is mutter. It goes back into the ground during Shemitah, which is forbidden, and now it grows a bit more. This new growth that happens in year number 7 does not get the same status as the original onion. Why? Because if it got the same status as the original onion, then it would be mutter, like the onion from year number 6. But since we see from the Braisa that this onion has the regular halachas of beer, the halacha must be that in the case of this onion of Shemitah, that the onion of Shemitah that grows in the 7th year has its own halachas, that we view it as if it grew in the 7th year. So from here we can bring a raya back to our din of a Yishmael that we began Ishkvar, that we began with today, that even though a sizable amount grows in year number 7, still, what is the halacha going to be? We're going to see from over here that the new growth has its own halacha. That's the point that we're honing in on. And because the new growth has its own halacha, what's the therefore? Therefore, explains the Ran, therefore, if the new growth will be a larger quantity than the original onion, it's going to, yes, be able to be mevatel, and it will create, and it will be aser in this case, because it's a year number 7 Shemitah onion. So says the Gemara, we have a raya. Answers the Gemara, similar to what we said before. No, maybe only l'chomra, because it's a Shemitah onion, it's year number 7, maybe that's the reason why we're not going to let it go basar, the ikar, the 6th-year fruit, and that's the reason why it will be forbidden. Continues the Gemara, let's try again. Titanan, 7 lines to the bottom, Amnun Chesam and Aleph. Tell them we have onions, we have onions that were picked, but they're still sitting on the ground. And what happens? It's a 6-year onion, which is mutter. It's lying on the ground in the year of Shemitah, and starts to rain, vitsamchu, and therefore they sprout a bit. And says the Mishnah, if the leaves are black, it doesn't really mean that they're black, it means that they're fresh, explains the Ran. Asurin, the halacha is, then it gets the status of a 7th-year onion, and it's forbidden. Hayriku. But if the leaves are not dark, if they're not fresh, they're pale, then mutarin, then it maintains the status of a 6-year onion and it's mutar. Rav Chananya ben Atignis Oimer, says Rav Chananya ben Atignis, lit loish ba'alin. No, if you could pull out this onion by the leaves, shalen, then asurin. Ukinegdan. And similarly, l'moitzai shvius, if you have an onion from the 7th year, which is lying in the ground in moitzai shvius, the 8th year, and it gets watered and it starts growing, in a similar scenario, if you're able to pluck it out by those leaves, mutarin will get the status of an 8th-year onion. So articulates the Gemara 2 lines at the bottom of the Chesam and Aleph, L'meimra, Gedulei Heter Malin Eseiser. What do we see? We see if the Gedulei Heter, we see if the new growth is a strong growth, it's a lot of growth, it's going to be Mal Iser. It's going to nullify the Iser. So says the Gemara, we have a beautiful writer, Shaila, the onion, a 6-year onion that got watered from Hashem as it was lying on the ground in year 7, or a 7th-year onion that got watered in year 8. What do we see if there's sufficient growth. If the leaves are dark, if you're able to pull it out, then it goes bust the new growth. So we see that the new growth is mevatel, the original growth, a beautiful raya. Says the Gemara in the last line of the Chesed Aleph, another dichoy, another way to push off the raya. V'dilma b'meduchanim. No, we're talking about over here a crushed up onion. Maybe the reason why over here, if there's sufficient leaves, if the leaves are dark, if you could pull it out by the leaves, maybe only over here we say it's mevatel. Why? Because the original onion was not a full onion, because the original onion was crushed up. And since the original onion was crushed up, it was not a davar chashiv, and that's the reason why it will yes be able to be mevatel by the new growth. Ella min ada. So says the Gemara, let's try another raya detanya, as we learned in a brisa, and we flip over to Nunches Amid Beis. Hamenachesh es akuti. Says the brisa, if someone is menachesh, if someone is pruning, and he's pruning together with the kuti, he's pruning a field together with a kuti b'chaisois, among the chaisois. Chaisos are a certain family, explains the Ran and the Mefarshim. Family of vegetables, not a family of vegetables, of herbs, which are onions, garlics, etc. So someone is pruning these onions, garlics, etc. And of course, what is the critical ingredient, as we saw back in the Mishnah yesterday? Onion is an entity, she'ein zarei kala, is an entity that the original item sticks around. So someone is pruning together with a kusi. What is the halacha? Oichel me'em achilas harai. In the field, you're allowed to eat from the vegetables that you're pruning. Uma'asrin vadai. But you have to take off meiser, and it's a vadai meiser because it's together with the kusi. Rashim ben Elazar Omer says with Shimon Elazar, Im Yisrael chashan al shviyes. If you're working together with a Yisrael who's chashan al shviyes, then l'maisai shviyes mutter. Then after Shemitah, if he prunes this field, then it's mutter, because you're pruning it in year number 8. We assume that as you're pruning this stuff in year number 8, the growth of year number 8 is larger than the previous growth of year number 7, and therefore it's mutter. So says the Gemara, beautiful raya. Lememra again, the gedulei atar malin is iser. That which grew out year number 8 permits this whole entity. It's a mal, and it nullifies that which grew iser in year number 7. Says the Gemara, wait, what's your raya? V'talma b'davar shezarei kala. As we saw yesterday in the Mishnah, we have things that the seed decomposes or not. So maybe this Mishnah, Menachesh Esekusi, is talking about something that the Zara is Kala, that the seed decomposes, and that's the reason why it's Mevatel it. But says the Gemara, Hatanya, Eloi Chaisois. As we explained, but what do you mean? The Mishnah says this is Chaisois. What are Chaisois? Chaisois is this family of herbs, onions, garlic, etc., which are what? Kigoin aluf. Type of vegetable, shom, garlic, vabitzalim, and onions, which are all entities that are ein zarei kala, which are all entities that the seed does not decompose. So seemingly we have a beautiful raya. Says Gemara, wait 1 second. Maybe it's talking about a case that is crushed up. As we saw a moment ago, if it's crushed up, then it's not such a big deal to be mevatel it. Not such a big deal to be mevatel it. Why not? Because it's no longer a davar chashiv, the fact that the original entity was crushed. Says the Gemara, Chashir al Shviyas Katani. What do you mean? The Mishnah said we're talking about someone who's Chashan al Shviyas. Someone who's Chashan al Shviyas doesn't know this halacha that if the onion would be crushed up, it would yes able to be mevatel it. And therefore there's no reason why he would crush up the onion. Says Gemara, okay, maybe we're talking about a case where these chaisois are mixed together with other items. And maybe that's the reason why it's able to be mevatel. And therefore it's not a raya to our original shayla of one onion, that the growth off of that onion can be mevatel the original onion. Says Gemara, nothing doing. Hamenachesh katani. It says that you're pruning it. It says that you're eating it in the field. Clearly it's not a tarayves. So says the Gemara, now we have a beautiful raya that when we have something that is planted in year number 7 onion, which is forbidden, and it grows in year number 8, the fact that in year number 8 there's sufficient growth, it's mevatel the onion from year number 7, and it's going to be mutter. So says the Gemara, Lema Tavit Yofta de Rav Yochanan v'Rav Yonasan. As we pointed out at the beginning of this year, and we can quickly peek back as we finish today's year on the bottom of the Zayin Amid Beis, Rav Yochanan and Rav Yonasan were the entities that came along and they wanted to bring rayos that says it's going to be aser. So says the Gemara, we now have a raya keneged Rav Yochanan, Rav Yonasan, and we're Amarayim, and we have rayas from a Preferish Abraisa. We are Char Tanayim. Says the Gemara, and with this we conclude, Amar Rav Yitzchak Shaini Shvius, Hoyel v'Yisura Yidei Karka, Betilasai Nami Al Yidei Karka. Don't bring me a raya from Shemitah, meaning our original Shaila, all the way back from yesterday's Shir and Zayin Mabiz of Yishmael Ish Kvar Yama or Yishmael Ish Kvar Di Yama was a Batal Shei Akroi B'Shviz V'Natoi B'Shminis. So says the Gemara, don't bring a raya. You know why? Because Shemitah is going to be different. Why? Because it has to do with the karka, and that's the reason, as the pasuk says, "V'shavsa Aretz Shabbos LaHashem," that the Aretz, the land, should rest on Shemitah, and that's the reason that it's going to change the halacha. Why? Because we're discussing a case of Shemitah, whereas in our Mishnah we just quoted of Amanachesh Akuti, it's referring to Meiser, Arla. So those are going to be different halachos. Arla and Klai Kerem are going to be different halachos. So for the fact that we see that Arla and Klai Kerem will yes be mavatel, is not going to bring me a raya to halachos of Shemitah. Therefore says the Gemara, it's not going to be a kasha on Rav Yochanan and Rav Yonasan. We're going to stop over here. This sugya is going to continue in tomorrow's daf, which will pick up from Harei Meiser D'Isura Yidei Karka, and yet we see that it's not batal. P'siyata D'Shmaya in tomorrow's daf. Kol Tov.